Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Between the Covers. My name is Bradley Shaw. Thank you for joining us tonight. And this evening, we're talking to new author Karen Thurecht with her book coming out in December for Murder at the Dunwich Asylum, which is the Dr Hamish Hart series of murder mysteries. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it's lovely to talk to you again. Tell us more about the Hamish Hart series, or this particular first book in any way.
Okay, well, the Hamish Hart series of mysteries is about a young, eager doctor who comes to Brisbane in 1884 to set up practice. And particularly in The Murder at the Dunwich Asylum, which is the first book in the series, he goes to Dunwich on Stradbroke Island, so island in Moreton Bay, just off Brisbane, to do some research around the asylum that existed on the island at that time. And the first morning when he arrives, there's an inmate, a female inmate, found hanging, and he examines the body and becomes convinced that the young woman was murdered. But the authorities at the asylum are absolutely determined to convince everyone that she committed suicide. Mm-hmm. So Hamish becomes involved in an investigation, and he's hell-bent and determined to keep on going regardless of what they throw in front of him. And during the course of his investigations, he actually uncovers a number of dark secrets about the asylum that the authorities would probably prefer were kept secret and not known. So he gets into all sorts of trouble and adventures through the process of unravelling the mystery of this murder.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wow, I love those books. Were you inspired by the historical styles of Agatha Christie or
yeah, absolutely. I love murder mysteries. I write murder mysteries because I love to read murder mysteries, and absolutely Agatha Christie. But, there's so many great Australian mystery writers as well. I really love the Fry and Fisher series with Kerry Greenwood. She's so much fun. And also Jackie French has written some lovely books. The Miss Lily series are great fun. So what is a Slurry Gentile? She writes about Roland Sinclair. He's a great series as well. So I just love a good murder mystery.
Awesome. So did you put a lot of research into this being a local to that area? Did you find the research was accessible?
Yeah, I think I started the series here at Dunwich because, they say write about something that you know. And so it was really easy for me to be able to write about Dunwich. Stradbroke Island is a place I've lived for the last 30 years, and I absolutely have a connection to the place, a real spiritual connection, and I love the history. It's got quite an extraordinary history. So it was a really a no-brainer to start the series here.
Good. And the period you set it in too, was that important to have that element of history?
I set that. Well, when I looked at the asylum history, so I knew that I wanted the murder mystery to happen in the asylum, as that was the most interesting period for me of the history on Straddy. And when I looked into the history of the asylum, it was at its busiest during those years. So there was a lot going on, and there was a lot of interest from the colonial authorities about what was going on. There was a lot of information in all the newspapers in Brisbane and throughout Australia at the time about what was happening at the asylum. So it was a great, deep time to be able to research and write about. Having said that, the story is completely fiction. All the incidents that happen are just completely made up, but they're certainly set in the historical period, that the book is written in.
Yeah, no, it's got great authenticity, like for the place, the location, the characters, the period. You've done really well in putting the elements together that you'd almost think it was a true story in some respects. But that's good you clarified that for everyone. Yeah. So how long did that book take you to sort of research, and like from first point to research and then to write? Like What's the period of time you spent in developing that book?
That one took me 2 years to write, from start to finish, from concept right through to the finish of the editing. But during that time, I discovered very, very early on in year one that I had no idea what I was doing. I've written non-fiction and academic work for years, and I thought, how hard can this be? I read murder mysteries, I'm going to write one. And it turns out that I didn't have a clue. So I did a course through the Australian Writers Centre over the first 12 months, and I put together probably 3/4 of the book during that course. So that was slow going because I was learning what I needed to do and what I needed to stop doing, probably more that. But yeah, so then the second year I was away, I was able to sort of finish it and polish it. And there's about 4 months of beta readers and editing and re-editing, and that amount of process that went on in that 2 years as well.
And it shows the discipline, the commitment to the story, the development is there. And I think, again, that's credit to you. You said too that this is your first stepping into fiction. So what made you decide that was the steps you wanted to take? And as you said, to delve into that, to learn that craft.
I've always had a secret kind of inkling that I wanted to write fiction. I remember when I was writing my PhD, my supervisor kept saying to me, "Karen, this is an academic thesis. You're not writing a novel." And I'm like, really, I want to write a novel. And so it's just been, life gets in the way, and sometimes it takes you a really long time to get around to doing what you actually wanted to do in the first place. So yeah.
And you're finding now it's a lot more satisfying, of course. I mean,
and love it. I wake up every single day excited about the day and what I'm going to get achieved, during that day. And so it's just wonderful.
So you find you're writing a lot more, do you have a lot of time more to write? Have you
Well, I've made more time to write. I guess throughout my career, I've had an extremely busy career. I've travelled a lot, which has been fantastic, and I've had wonderful adventures, and I wouldn't change anything. But at the same time, I didn't have a lot of time to write fiction. I was very much head down and writing non-fiction and reports for governments, and publishing for academic journals and marking student papers. Take up all the fun stuff.
So with this one, now this is interesting. One of the things with this genre, as you mentioned, there's a lot of really good writers out there. There's a lot of good people who can drop those herrings, the red herrings, through a story and really entice readers into, the pain of reading through it all to find the answer. So with that in mind, did you focus on trying to really create an original voice, or were you comfortable trying to find a way that readers are comfortable in reading it, if that makes sense?
I just tried to understand my characters. With the first one, with this murder at the Dunwich Asylum, I really had no idea how to work out a plot. And so I was learning about the structure of a novel and about the process of writing a novel and putting a novel together, and then about genre. So mystery writing is a specific genre with its own, rules and structures. And I was learning all that at the same time as I was writing the story. So I kind of focused more on the characters. I made sure that I knew who they were my friends, I spent time with them, I hung out, and they did things. And then it was really more toward the end in the editing process that I had a structural assessment done, a manuscript assessment. I think that is such an important step for new authors particularly. And it kind of identified all the structural flaws that had come out, because the characters just do whatever they want. They don't follow, rules.
Definitely. They generally evolve. That's our job. Keep them tight, keep them focused. Moving the story. It was as a result of the manuscript assessment that I was able to go back then and put everything in the right order and get everybody to link up. Good. So with that as well, did you find, because your main character, Dr Hamish Hart, did you find it a challenge, not only in a period, but was it a challenge to write the opposite sex, to understand his psychological processes as a woman writing a male dominated character?
I wondered if it would be. I wondered if it would be a challenge, and I did toy with the idea of making the protagonist a female for that reason. But Hamish just wouldn't be anyone but Hamish. That's the character that came to me and the character that grew and evolved. And so in the end, it wasn't hard. No, it's up to others to tell me whether I got it right. But Hamish is Hamish.
No, he's a very intriguing character, which is why I was wondering how you develop that opposite sex understanding, because you do give him such a personable male elements of his character.
Yeah.
And a lot of women writers do that well. There's a lot of women writers who can write really strong male characters.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if you had any challenges with that.
No, and I couldn't tell anyone what the process is, because I don't know. Just a friend.
So with this too, did you find there was any because in this sense, in this element, you're explaining it to me this way, that you're saying you really developed not only a story and the characters in the story, but you also developed your art and craft as a writer, like learning how to write that element of story. So what was the most difficult part for you in that whole sort of artistic arc? And I ask this question for the new writers, for people who are going to look at this and think, wow, you've done this amazing book. How did you do this and create this?
Just learn at the same time as doing.
Because most people are scared of that. That's what they're scared of, is they're actually not going, oh, the novel, I've got the ideas. I could probably jot it all out, but they're scared of the discipline, the art, the learning, the criticisms for getting better. They're scared of those elements, which is really the most empowering thing.
Yeah, well, I think you've answered your own question.
I agree, but I want to find from you. I want to find out from you. Is that what you agree with? Or?
Yeah, I was scared. Like all authors are scared, and we all think we're not good enough, and you just don't know, because writing's such a solitary thing, and it's not till someone reads it and tells you what they think that there's any chance of you knowing whether you're good or not, basically, in the reader's eyes. And so, of course, I was scared, but I think that long history of work in academia also hardens you. I've had my work critiqued by some really mean people.
You have a certain objectivity from that discipline too.
Yeah, and there was no one that I came across in the fiction world that was ever as mean to me about my writing as my lecturers or supervisors were, during my academic time, or other people that critique your work, other professionals that review your journals and so forth. So it's a hard academia, it's a hard world, and you learn to take criticism very objectively. Yeah. And so I guess while I was afraid, and this is different because it's more personal and very nature of it, it's hard for you to step back and be objective because it's your thing, it's coming from your heart and soul. But I did have those skills to be able to force myself to do that and to get over the fear and say, okay, well, they're probably going to trash it. And well, trash it is not a kind way to describe it, but some of my early drafts were trashed. But really nicely and sensitively, the people that at the Australian Writer Centre were wonderful and sensitive, but they certainly didn't step back from saying, well, this is not going to work. Yeah.
No, that's good, and it's inspiring too that you kept yourself focused on that goal. I mean, you obviously had a belief in not just yourself, but you found a story, and the characters you fell in love with, you've designed that, and you kept pushing through to get that right for the characters, but also to respect that. Did you think that you would get to publishing? Did you think that was that your always goal, or was it just a matter of, I want to learn this craft first and then evolve?
Yeah, in the beginning, I was really focused on learning the process. I'm also, because of my background, I'm also a process person, and I truly believe that in every field you go into, there's a process to learn. And so I wanted to learn the process. And I thought, maybe I'll be good at it. Maybe I won't be so good at it, but I really want to learn this process. And so during the time, as I progressed through learning the process, I got quite excited every time I got a little bit better, and I started to get better comments from reviewers. And it's a real kick to think, I know how to do this now. And having said that, the second book has been so much easier to put together. So I've written it in 12 months.
Good.
And obviously it's got to go through the process of publishing all the stages. Those stages take a long time as well. But the actual writing of it, I started on the 2nd of February this year, and I'll have it finished by 30th of November. And that's having gone through all the better reviews and the editing. So, it takes me 12 months to write a book, I've discovered.
Yeah, good. And so Hamish evolves into book 2 as well. So this character has so much more scope as well because he's such an intriguing, endearing character.
Yeah. So Hamish, basically the characters that go through, there's Hamish Hart has a best friend called Rita Cartwright, and she's a female doctor who studied at the London School of Medicine for Women. But at the time that the stories are set, women weren't allowed to register to practice as doctors in Australia. So Rita has to work as a pharmacist, and she works at the Lady Bowen Lying In Hospital, which was, a real place in Brisbane at the time. And Rita offsets a lot of Hamish's character. So, for example, Hamish procrastinates. He's always trying not to get involved while getting involved. Whereas Rita jumps in feet first and often drags Hamish along with her as she's going and gets him into all sorts of trouble. So she offsets his character. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so
both of them go through. Every protagonist has got to have a sidekick in a murder mystery.
Absolutely. So in this book, you find that when you wrote the first book, did you write it intentionally as a standalone, or did you want to see yourself develop a body of work that was all connected through Hamish as well? So that was your plan to start, or did you just sort of go into the first book as that learning craft and then found yourself going, I can do more?
As a person who loves a murder mystery, I know that a lot of successful murder mysteries series. So when I first started writing, I wanted to learn the process, like I said, and I thought, maybe I'll be good at this, maybe, I won't be, or maybe I just won't like it after a little while. But the more that I learned and the more that I loved it, the more I knew that it would be a series.
Good. And I'm sure, like, reading the first one's wonderful. You're going to get a great series and following. I think I'm really optimistic that everybody out there watching this is going to fall in love with Hamish and go through and go through the characters with you. So is your family very supportive? Have they been embracing this new change and verve and passion that you've developed for this?
Yeah, they're supportive. Like, for the family, nothing much has changed because I write a lot for a living, and so whether I'm writing fiction or non-fiction doesn't make that much difference to them, but they do think I'm a bit weird because, I walk around talking about these friends like they actually exist.
So they've seen that change. So obviously it's given you a breath of fresh air as well, because it's taken away from the studious writing that you've done in your history and put you into a new vein of expression, which is, again, a delight for people. But
I'm so excited about it. I just love it. I didn't know how much I would love it, but I just really do.
I've watched you bloom. I've seen you over the last 12 months. Yeah, you've been wonderful to work with it on as well. So the first one took you 2 years to write. You looked at a year on this second book. Do you feel that would get easier or better once you're flow? Are you still building that confidence? I'm
definitely still building confidence, and I'm still learning. I think that because I've got the process down pat now, I know the process, where I start, what I progress through, and where I finish. So I think that probably the 12 months is the length of time that it takes for me. All writers are different.
That's comfortable too.
For me to get through the process.
I spoke to one of our writers who writes 1,000 words a day and within 3 or 4 months has the book. I'm like, wow, if you could do that, that's great. I mean, you've got that ability to structure it in such a way. But for me, I'm the same. I can take my time, enjoy the crafting, enjoy the writing, and let it transpose, enjoy the editing. And I love taking a year or two sometimes just to enjoy and delve into and make sure everything's right for us for the process. So with that in mind, what was the biggest challenge for you in writing this book? Like, besides it was your first and you had to learn the craft, What else? What other experiences did you find that were unexpected, perhaps challenges of learning?
What was it? The biggest challenge for me was learning the new way of constructing sentences that I had to learn. So not so much the big picture structure of the book. I knew I had to learn about the structure of a novel and those kinds of things, and also the structure of my particular genre. But having to learn right down to sentence order and direction of sentences. So academics, we describe things that we've seen or done, basically, when we write a paper. This is what I did, this is what I saw, and this is how it turned out. Whereas in a novel, you've got to be in the moment. You've got to be writing inside the person at that time and what they're going through and experiencing. Yeah. I get that, but the actual technical construction,
yeah, you'll be amazed. And it's one of the things I see a lot with new authors during our editing cycle is the constructing of their tense or their perceptions or their point of views change because they forget that they become the character, or they step outside the character, or they sort of shift themselves through the story as well. And you've got to try to put the author, to try to say, look, let the narrative, construct it this way and blah blah. And yes, I agree. That's part of the developing skill. So it is hard to learn those elements.
Oh yeah, it's probably the hardest skill for me because I kept slipping back to what I was used to.
Yeah. No, that's great. And from that perspective, as that's the hardest skill, for that purpose, tell me more on what specifically did you feel was the hardest scene for you to write? Because there's a lot of scenes that have emotion, have expression, have incidences. What was for you the hardest one that you had to personally, be challenged with writing?
The hardest scene in Murder.
But don't give anything away.
Sorry?
Don't give anything away.
No. Oh, the bit at the end where...
Don't do that.
I actually think that the first scene was the hardest to write, and probably because it was the first, and I was the scaredest, and I had learned a lot about how the first scene can actually propel the book or propel the reader forward or make them put the book down. And so I got kind of stuck on that idea.
Yeah, I think people, put a lot of pressure on that first page.
We do, yeah.
I don't think that's as necessary as it used to be. I don't know. I still feel it's important, but I don't feel, I think readers give people a little more latitude these days. They see,
I think so. And I think it's important still. Well, I think in contemporary novels, it's really important to get to the action quickly because I think if you, going on until page 50 and still nothing's happened, people are going to get bored. But I don't necessarily think that first scene has got to be the best thing in your book. It's ease the reader in. But
sometimes that works for writers. I've seen some very good thriller writers, maybe thriller suspense works for that sort of impact sort of writing. But I think mystery crime, you really want to develop a suspense, a sense of environment, a sense of atmosphere in the writing. That's what engages readers as much in that genre because they want to feel they're included in the story. I don't think it's a matter of readers outside a story in that crime mysteries. Personally, I'm just
I think you're right. Yeah,
I think you did that really well by opening doorways and letting them explore the asylum and explore the experiences. As fresh as it was to Hamish as well. So he's come into it, and it's just I really liked it. So when you were a lot younger, what were you planning to do before doctoring? What were you planning to do as a younger person, like a young girl in high school even? What would you say to your friends? I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be, an astronaut.
When I was in primary school, I would tell people I wanted to write books. I used to read constantly, and it's all I really wanted to do. Books and art. I'd draw. And so I used to tell people I wanted to write books. But as I got older, and I kind of felt that possibly wasn't a realistic option, which I don't know why we think that, but I did when I was young. I wanted to be a teacher. So I guess in one way or another, I've taught for most of my life, and I've written for most of my life. And I kind of felt okay with that until I just now realised, you know what, you can actually write these fun books. You don't have to write that stuff.
That's right. Yeah, you can write, and this is what you're doing now. But I agree, and I think our generation was, I had, my father was always telling me, get a fallback don't, I want to be an actor, I want to be a writer, I want to be an artist.
Yeah.
I was very free-spirited. So he was always saying, get a cement, get something solid, and explore all the arts you want.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we cultivated that in our mindset as we were younger. So I let go of that same sense of the things that we had until later in life, when you could sort of have the ability to express it again, explore things again. Yeah. But I also think that's beneficial. Did you find for yourself too that being more mature when you were writing was better for you as opposed to, I think, writing when you were younger? You were ready, do you think? You would have had that ability and discipline to write as well as you did?
I've probably developed the discipline over the years, but I don't know that I would have had the maturity to approach the stories in the way that I do now. They'd be different stories, and who knows, but I think it would have been a lot harder then for me to be able to have the maturity to follow through a story and not kind of disappear down the dark navel of some character that I became interested in.
Yes, fair enough. So when did you learn or understand that words you created or expressed had some power, that language could have some power in that effect? When I was at school, even primary school, I could read. I know I could read by the time I started primary school, because I remember I was in grade 2, I read Lord of the Flies or something like that. It was really scared my mother. Yes. That was a very dark, ominous book. Yes, well done.
I don't even know where I got it. And so I loved the word. I loved the written word. I just loved mostly what I loved to do was disappear in books. I loved that, I could just escape into these books, and I was heavily into all the classics. By the time I was 10, I had read all of Thomas Hardy and D.H. Lawrence and all of those dudes, that do let you just wander off and disappear down the navel of some idea or some character.
Great writers,
It's kind of frowned on now in contemporary literature, but
we get so cynical, don't we? So when so developing now, we know the Dunwich Asylum is a real place and a real sort of element you've created. In your next books, in the series, you've obviously had to find locations and storylines. How hard or how difficult have you found creating those and researching those elements and putting the authenticity into your work?
I love the research part. It's so exciting. By the time I got to the end of Murder at the Dunwich Asylum, I sort of started thinking about the place and the context of the next book, and so I was really, really chafing at the bit to get on with the research, and once I was able to get stuck into it, I love it. And so I learned about whole new areas that I didn't know about before, whole new industries and all sorts of things. So it's just really exciting. And now, of course, I'm at the end of the year with Plantation Murders, the second book, and I'm already starting to think about the context of the third. So I'm at that same point where I just want to get it finished now because I want to start researching.
It's got to all happen.
Yeah.
So tell me, if your book, just the first one, if Dr. Hamish was going to become a real 3D person, or even on screen, be made into a movie. What would actor? Who would you see?
An actor to play Hamish.
Who would play?
I reckon Eddie Redmayne would be a good Hamish.
Very good. And Rita? What do you think of Rita?
What him? Not bad. Stretch the budget.
Yeah, I can do that. I'll take care of it. I'll make it cool. But what about Rita? Who would play Rita?
Rita, I'm less sure about, but maybe Hermione. What's that?
Oh, Granger. Hermione Granger. I don't know the actress's name.
I don't remember her name.
Is it Wilson? Something Wilson? Watson?
Yeah, Emma
Watson.
Emma Watson.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not.
She might be good Rita. She's little. Rita's little, but she's feisty.
Yep. Okay, well, they're two actors. I'll send out some calls and see if I can.
You can be working on that.
Yeah. So tell me about what would you say? I was just looking at something. What would you say is your real writer quirk? What would you say, like if you're writing? Some writers have particular mugs, they have particular seats, they have particular ways of. They must have a pen, certain ways of doing things.
Okay.
What's your quirk? What's your writer quirk that we?
This might be a bit embarrassing. For all of winter, because I hate being cold. I live in Queensland, for God's sakes. It's never actually cold, but it's cold for me. And so I lay in bed with a laptop on my tummy.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, at least it's better than sitting on the loo, writing on the laptop.
Too much sharing?
Yeah. So, I was just going to think, what else, does it exhaust you or exhilarate you? Right.
No, it exhilarates me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I love it.
So, because you seemed very excited when you talked about the researching, so that's obviously a very high point.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
A lot of people get to the editing, so they can go through the development, but then they get to the editing. What do you feel for yourself about the editing process?
The editing gets really tedious. Yeah.
You've gone through the book so many times, and you think.
Yeah. The editing gets tedious. The exciting part is when the manuscript assessment comes back and you've got some really great ideas to work on. That's exciting, and I get stuck into those. Yep. But then when it gets to the point where you're really just editing the words, the sentence structure,
doing the basic,
the basic stuff, and you think, oh my God, I cannot read this enough. I can't do it. I swear I can't.
It doesn't ever end.
Yeah, but you can, you get up and you can and you do, and you're glad you did. At the end of the day, you find lots of problems.
That's right. Do you find you obsess about certain elements, or that you sort of, got to let it go? You get to a point where you say, you know what, that page, that paragraph is going to be as good as it's going to be. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm
a let goer. I'm a let goer. I get it to a certain point where I'm pretty comfortable with it, and then I send it to someone professional to do the nitpicking, because that's what they're good at.
That's what their job is. Yeah, get rid of that way.
Yeah. And I accept, what they say. I go, absolutely. You put that comma there. I'm happy with that.
So if you had to share some information to an up-and-coming aspiring writer who's going to venture into this vein of attempting their own first book, what would you tell them? What's your personal perspective to give them?
The thing that I would like to say to new writers is not to be afraid to listen to your feedback. Absolutely. Get your work out there, get as many people as you can hook in to read it, and listen to what they say, because while it is your heart and soul, it doesn't, it's okay if you would just want to write a book for yourself and you're going to keep it in the bottom drawer. You can have it however you want. But if it's going to go out to a readership, then the readers need to be able to connect with it. And so whatever the readers say, that's what you need to consider. And as much as you might stomp your feet, I stomp my feet sometimes, and I go, no, that's just not so. But then, 10 minutes later, I'll sit down and go, and rewrite the section.
Do what's got to be done. It's a frustrating process being a crafted and a talented artist. You got to be appreciated.
Nobody understands me.
I concur. It is hard, but I think that's real. Be honest with the criticism. Embrace it. And learn from it. And like I say, it is a hard thing for some people to face, but that's part of the process. And if you're confident,
you're not a writer unless you've got readers.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of that, the readers are watching us tonight, and I do want to express a big thank you, Karen, for not only writing such a wonderful book for us to read and enjoy, coming out in December 15th. It's available. You can pre-order the book, and one of the things I would ask every person viewing this video is to grab a copy of Karen's book, enjoy it, indulge it, and start the series as she plans. Also, I ask you to go to bookstores as much as possible and ask them to order it for you. Support local bookstores, local businesses, because they've been challenged a lot through this year, and we really need them to be there, to be around for our love of books in the future. So I ask you to go and ask your local bookstore to buy Karen's book. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Bradley.
Pleasure, and I'm looking forward to talking to you on the next book next time as well. But as I say, Karen's book is out. Grab a copy. Thank you, everyone, for viewing us, and we look forward to next time. Thank you again. Good night. Now.